me, ma'am, can I see your driver's license?
Why does a driver's license matter? I'm 35 and a half in horse years. That's what counts, right?
Well, Maddie might not look 35, but let's go check out some horses that might be closer to 35 years old.
Howdy, and welcome to the Bar SC Ranch, where you will experience our journey of running a family business, caring for animals, and doing life together. Subscribe now and be inspired here at the Bar SC.
Today we're going to be talking about older horses and how we can take better care of them, give them a better, longer quality of life, and what is involved in noticing that a horse is a little bit older, and what we can do about horses that are a little bit older to keep them happy for the rest of their lives. Here at the ranch, we have the privilege of taking care of several older horses. We really enjoy giving them a much higher quality of life in their older years, keeping them comfortable. And we've got a few tricks of the trade that we would love to share with you today about how we help our older horses feel and look really great well up into their later years. When people come and ride with us, oftentimes they ask us, how old are your horses? And how long does the average horse live? The average horse lifespan is about 27 years, give or take 5 years in either direction. We have had horses here as old as 43, and we have some younger horses. We have a 2-year-old and everything in between. So the other question that I get asked is, well, how do you know how old the horse is? There are several ways that we can tell how old a horse is. The first one is by actually having its registration papers. Some of our horses are registered and we have papers for that. If you don't have registration papers, there are other ways that you can tell how old your horse is. The first one is by looking at its teeth. You can tell how old a horse is by looking at its teeth. Check out our last video on horse teeth to get a really good idea of how you can age a horse by their teeth. Another way you can tell how old they are is just by looking at their overall body composition and type. As a horse gets up in age, they will start to lose muscle and they'll start to look sometimes a little bit more thin and just a little bit less athletic than the younger horses. One of the other things that we get asked a lot about are the divots that we see kind of appear over the horse's eyes. As a horse ages, these divots appear and then they get kind of more and more sunken in. That's just kind of a way to tell that they're older. Some horses don't ever get this, but this has to do with just how the muscles in the head start to atrophy a little bit as they get older. Josie here is the oldest horse that we have on the ranch currently. She's about 34 or maybe even a little bit older. We've been working really hard at keeping her healthy and looking good. She is, of course, extremely old. So that's why we have some deep suborbital dimples here. And then also you'll just kind of notice as we look at the rest of her body that she's definitely a little bit lacking muscle over her top line. She has, despite the fact that she eats constantly, she has a little bit of less coverage over her ribs and her hip bones are starting to stick out. She doesn't have a super sway back, but her back is starting to sway a little bit. That's definitely a sign that we see in older horses. So with Josie, she gets some pretty special care to keep her nice and happy. Bella here is an example of one of our younger horses. She is about 18, so that doesn't mean she's young, but she's certainly considerably younger than Josie. So notice over her eyes, she still doesn't have the depressions, the deep depressions that Josie is having. And then you can tell over her body, she's still got a lot of muscle. She's definitely got a little bit of chunky fat too. But she stays nice and fat. She's got coverage over her ribs, her hip bones not sticking out any. And her back is still pretty nice and flat because she's not that old yet. So just looking at them briefly, that is how you tell the difference between a really old horse and a horse that's not so old. One of the questions I frequently get asked is, are human years the same as horse years? The answer to that question is no, they're not exactly the same. As a matter of fact, horse years they move a little bit faster, actually a lot faster than human years. So a 10-year-old horse is about the equivalent of a 35-and-a-half-year-old human. Then as a horse ages to 13 years old, they're considered about 43 and a half. And then as they get just to 17 years old, that's about 53 years old in human years. And then when you get to 20, when a horse is 20 years old, that's about equivalent to a 60-year-old human. As I was saying earlier, horses usually live to an average of 27 years old. So, you know, that's kind of a 27-year-old horse is a very old human. Josie over there, who is 34, is really about 100 and something years old in human years. So that's kind of how it equates. So here at the ranch we have a lot of older horses. When it comes to exercise, we're going to treat those horses a little bit differently than a younger horse. And all that means is that we're going to give them a longer warm-up time so that the horses really get their joints and muscles moving before we ask them to do anything very strenuous when they're out on the trail rides with us. We're also really careful about what we ask the older horses to do. We don't ask them to do anything super strenuous that could hurt their legs or their joints more than the younger horses can definitely tolerate that a lot better. Sometimes if we are going to use a horse and we know that it's something they really want to do, like a longer trail ride, we'll use kind of an anti-inflammatory called Butte, or there's a number of them on the market that our veterinarian recommends, and just to keep them nice and comfortable on a long ride. We definitely treat older horses a little bit differently than we treat the younger horses. It's really important, especially in hot and cold weather, to make sure that we're paying attention to keeping our horses a little bit more comfortable. Here at the ranch, we'll bring the older horses in to make sure that they always have access to shelter when it's super hot or even when it's super cold, and especially when it's pouring rain. In addition to a shelter, they will get nice warm blankets in the wintertime to help them keep nice and warm. If we have a horse that has something called Cushing's disease, where they aren't losing their hair very readily, we'll go ahead and clip them in the summertime just to make sure that they don't have super long hair that keeps them too hot as well. In addition to the shelter aspect and blanketing aspect, we make sure that the horses always have access to clean, fresh water, and that they have access to the adequate and proper quantities and amounts of food that they need to maintain as good a body condition as possible. There are literally hundreds of different supplements and feeds that you can get for your older horses. All of them claim to be amazing, and I have no doubts that a great majority of them are amazing. You just need to kind of try things out, talk to people, figure out what's going to work with you, and of course, always talk with your veterinarian to make sure that whatever feed you're thinking about feeding is going to be safe and effective for the horse that you're going to be feeding it to. For us here on the ranch, we actually have, most of our horses are over 15 years old, meaning they're definitely all senior horses. Any of our horses that start looking a little bit thin or needing more than just hay to keep them happy, we've come up with a masterful senior bucket that we're going to tell you about. We love it. It works really, really well. What we have is, first we start, the base is, we'll give 2 pounds of the Elk Grove Senior Stable Mix. It does not have molasses in it. It's just got a bunch of mostly Timothy hay and alfalfa that's been smashed into little pellets. And this is really easy for horses to chew. As horses get up older and their teeth start to deteriorate, and sometimes horses lose them. Josie here is missing a good portion of her teeth. A pelleted hay like this can really supplement that regular flakes of hay, and because it's so much easier to chew and so much easier to digest. You can even water these down and they almost disintegrate, so the horse really doesn't have to do much. If they're missing most of their teeth, they can eat it, and it will work just as well as hay, we've found. So our buckets start with this senior stable mix, and the horses tend to love it. We've never had a horse not love it. Josie can't wait to get it right now. And then we give about a 1/2 pound of stabilized rice bran as well. This is just a good source of carbohydrates, and it's very, very fattening. So we like to add a little bit of that to our buckets. And then on top of that, we put about a half a pound of beet pulp. Beet pulp is a really, really great fattening agent we have found, and we found that the horses really, really love it. Some people hate it, and they swear by never using it. We have found that it works amazing. So the one thing you need to know about beet pulp is that it must be, you must put water on it. It needs to be soaked for at least 15 minutes before you go ahead and feed it to a horse. We usually soak ours overnight so that we just make sure that none of it is still dry. Dry beet pulp absorbs a lot of water. That's not a huge problem until it enters your horse's stomach, and it will absorb all the water that's in that stomach and get bigger and bigger. So you want to make sure that it's fully expanded when the horse eats it, and that it's not going to be sucking up the water that's in their tummy. In addition to the hundreds of different types of feeds that there are on the market for older horses, there are 100 different supplements that you can give them as well, for their joints, for their bones, for their muscles, for their coat, their hooves, their teeth, everything. We have found that some of those work really, really well for us, others do not. One thing that is super consistent is we always make sure that our horses are getting some kind of loose salt, mineral salt, so that they're getting all of their trace minerals and the amount of salt that they need, especially if their teeth aren't so good and they're not able to lick a salt block enough. This ensures that they're getting all of the nutrients and minerals that they need. We find that our senior horses absolutely love getting their bucket every day. Another bonus about giving them a bucket every day is not only can you get them extra feed, can you get them extra supplements, but any medication that's really important. Older horses are very, very notorious for getting a disease called Cushing's disease. Cushing's disease we're going to cover in another one of our videos, so look back for that. But essentially it can cause some problems such as hair growth, immunocompromised conditions, things like that. So it's really easy to deal with. However, they can get medication for it. We give our horses a little tablet called Pergolide or Presend in their bucket every day, and that keeps down the Cushing's, and it's really important that they get it, and it's a great way to hide it is in the bucket. So taking care of old horses is really fun. It's definitely a responsibility. It's important to understand how old your horse is, little things that you can do to make them a little bit more comfortable and happy in their job and in their life. The last thing I wanted to say is make sure that you get your horse's teeth floated all the time as well. So that is something that we are very concerned about, making sure that their teeth are good on top of all the other things we just talked about.
If you enjoy this video, we'd love to hear from you. Like and subscribe and leave a comment about what you might like to see in future videos. We'll see ya back on the ranch.